That's completely changed my life for the better. I get like emotional talking about it sometimes because at its peak, when it was really bad, I was actually hospitalized for a bit because of like severe, and I don't even know if we talked about it. I was like in a psychiatric unit for a bit and we had to figure out like right medication. I didn't sleep for like 3 months. I lost 35 pounds. This is temporary. I can live through it. I can deal with it. I have the tools to cope with it, and then I'll feel better afterwards. I'll be okay. It's life saving. I'm a preventionist. I want to prevent suicidal ideation and action. I want to prevent drug addiction and dropout. I want to prevent severe depression and dependency on healthy relationships. If I can prevent those things, I've done my job.
Welcome to The Narrative, a podcast of untold stories, a place where silence is broken, secrets are unearthed, and stories find their voice. I'm Dr. Crystal Ann England, therapist, storyteller, and your guide for healing through truth. From intergenerational wisdom to identity, race, purpose, and power, this is a sacred space for the stories we were never taught to tell, but always needed to hear. Because healing begins when our stories are spoken. Welcome to the narrative of Untold Stories. Today, I am so excited. I am sitting down talking to my dear old friend, David Krasky. Dave, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell the people, who are you?
Sure. So, my name's Dave. I am a licensed school psychologist in South Florida, working in a private practice with a lot of other professionals that also work with kids, teens, families, couples. I've been doing this for about 20 years now. I started off when I was in grad school, actually, as a teacher, teaching at alternative school. So, teaching kids with some severe behavioral and emotional issues. Then where I met Crystal Ann, I ended up getting a job after I graduated as a school psychologist at a private school with the complete opposite side of the spectrum of families and children.
Mm-hmm.
And after doing that for about 5, 6 years, I decided to go off on my own. And I've been working in private practice since, specializing mostly kids, teens, young adults on both testing. So looking at if there's learning disabilities, ADHD, autism, emotional or mood disorders, along with the therapy piece. And I love, like, my passion really is that kind of 15 to 25-year range of teens, young adults with either anxiety issues, autism related issues, social issues, and with the whole purpose of we need to prepare you to be independent, problem solvers, socially, emotionally well adjusted, healthy young people for the world.
Dave, you forgot something in your introduction.
What's that?
David is also a author.
Oh, right. I wrote a book.
Just a little small thing. He also,
I did.
wrote this little book here, you know, with so much incredible insight. And I'm sure we will definitely talk about the book soon. But Dave, so tell me, let's switch gears for a moment and tell me a little bit about where did you grow up? How did you grow up?
So I grew up in South Florida in the 80s and 90s, and that true Gen X type of childhood of I would disappear on the weekend. My parents wouldn't know where I was. I'm coming back late at night. Got my bicycle at age 8 and I was gone. And I think my own family, because their parents were a little more hovering, they purposefully stepped back a lot. They saw my grades were good and I showed up every night with no major injuries or the cops not escorting me to the door. So they figured, all right, he's got this figured out. So I was on my own. Right. Like I figured out everything through trial and error, whether it was staying up late to do homework because I waited last minute, or biking too far away and realizing like, oh my God, I have to like bike back home. That's gonna take me hours. A very social experience. So always with friends, whether it was playing sports outside, playing in the streets, sleepovers. So my history or my background was very independent. From an early age, I was doing it all on my own. I don't know when I meet these kids are like, "Oh, my parents helped me pick colleges." I'm like, "What do you mean? Like they helped you?" So I had to do all that and visit colleges on my own, apply to colleges, apply for student loans, even all the way back to like if I was going on road trips, I had to have an atlas and kind of map out where I was going, figure out how to pay bills, how to get the best deals on things, how to interview, how to get jobs. So my overcorrection, and then I grew up, I found out later on with a pretty significant anxiety disorder. My way of handling it was being over-prepared and leaning on my strength of being very social and being very independent. So I kind of lean into it, but sometimes, and as anyone knows with anxiety, you can overdo it and have too great of an expectation, which then creates more anxiety. So that's one of the reasons I think I got into this, like my initial curiosity of wanting to know, well, what is this? And there's other people like this? Like this is fascinating. And I remember reading my first psychology books when I was like 19 or 20 and I couldn't stop. Like I was just back at the bookstore, just like getting more and reading more. And it was pretty easy for me. I knew right away, like, oh, like, man, I could get like paid to do something like this. Like this is great. Like I would do this for free if I could.
Growing up in the like, you're saying the 80s and the 90s, right? Having to figure all these things out on your own. And how much of that also, where did culture and where did your culture come in? Like, when you think about who you are as a person, do you think culture had anything to do with it either?
Completely. I remember from a young age. So both my parents are not college educated and they really regretted it and valued it. So since we were young, they would push on us. And part of it's, even ingrained in Jewish culture, because that's my background. It's always about education, because in the last 6,000 years, you know, Jews were getting killed a lot and kicked out of places a lot. They didn't have the numbers. They weren't very big people. They weren't very aggressive people. But they found, well, the only way we're going to succeed is if we're just smarter than other people. So let's just educate ourselves. So culturally, that was playing into it along the lines with two people that weren't educated, regretted it, and wanted to make sure their kids were. So from a young age, my parents told me, like, you're either going to college or you're going to the military. That's it. Those are your options. Right. And when you hear it from a young age, and my parents, they were blue collar. Like, my dad was at first a business owner, then a truck driver. My mom was a secretary. So that's how I grew up. We were middle class, but they worked, they weren't white collar. So knock wood, like I was blessed with a decent enough working brain that I was pretty good at school and I could sit in a classroom and I could learn and I could perform. So when you're in that culture too, and when you're with the other kids that are also told, hey, you're pretty bright, you can go to college, you believe you can go to college. Like I didn't even question it. Like I didn't even know there was a possibility I could get denied from college. Like I just thought, well, I'll just apply to UF and I'll go to UF, like easy. Versus, like you mentioned, like culturally, I'm sure there are plenty of kids, and I'm seeing even some now, pretty bright kids. Their parents tell them, well, your father and I didn't go to college. Like, you don't have to go to college. It's a waste of time or it's a waste of money. Like, you don't. And I sometimes say to the parent, like, well, what if your kid wants to? No, they don't need to go. Like, but they're really good at school. Like and it doesn't have to be college. I think of it and I've always kind of changed it. It's not about the institution, it's about learning, right? So if Crystal Ann says, well, I want to be a welder and welders make six figures, I'm like, great, but you're gonna have to learn to be a welder. So you have to go somewhere to get educated. I don't care where, if it's an apprenticeship or an internship, if it's a school, but you have to learn. So culturally, those two things had a very big influence, both from the background of like these people that weren't educated themselves. and weren't very good at school, and also religious wise and the culture behind that of like, we have to get an education. Like, this is the way it is. Like, there's the old stereotypical view of like, all the Jewish people I know are like lawyers and doctors. Like, there's a reason and truth behind it, because for 200 years, a lot of these young people were told, listen, this is the only way you're going to make it. You're not going to make it as an independent businessman or an athlete or a musician or an engineer or someone working hands on.
So it was the usual suspects, doctors,
Yeah.
lawyers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And luckily now we're seeing the pendulum, kind of like we were talking about that parenting, we're seeing the pendulum swing a little back to, no, you can do anything, just get good at it.
That's it.
Learn it,
Mm. Be the best at whatever
right? Like,
it's you want to do.
that's it.
Yeah.
Put in the time, put in the hours, make the connections, start young, and you can increase your chances of success for whatever it is. And it might not look like, well, I want to be a YouTuber with 10 million views. It might look different, but if you aim at that and you work hard and put in the time, you will succeed.
I'm just wondering because, a lot of times I feel like people have these stereotypes in their minds of even like just Jews, right? Like, oh, you mean you're not
Yeah.
wealthy? You weren't rich, Dave? You
Right.
didn't come from like a
Right.
rich family? What do you mean you were middle class, right? Were you really middle
Yeah.
class, Dave? Right? Like,
Right. Yeah. So the hard part I found, both culturally, socioeconomic status wise, I I had some aspirations when it came to like the music, arts, entertainment area, where that was immediately shut down. That was, nope, that is too risky. You want safe. Like, that is not an attainable goal. We are not promoting that, buying into it. Like, no, if you want to do that, that's on your own. Where it's interesting now, I meet families that, to a point, they can back their child's dreams, because sometimes there are financial limitations. But if it comes to putting the time, like, I know families that'll say, hey, if you got yourself an audition for something, for some kind of role or whatever else, I'll drive you. Absolutely. And I'll work later tonight so I could take off early today to help you achieve that. Where in my kind of world, it was, that is not possible. That is not going to happen. So I joke with people like, I think my whole teenage years, I thought I was always trying out for Saturday Night Live. Wherever I was, if I was in class, if I was at the mall, if I was playing sports, I always had someone watching me, so I had to be on. So it was always a bit or a skit or talking to people with a weird accent just to see how long I could do it before I start laughing. And when I brought that up to my parents, like, yeah, I really want to do this thing. No, like, that is not the trajectory. Like, you were going to college. You were good at school. This is what you're doing.
but how did that fuel you think, Dave, even to be the kind of parent that you are now, that you have two teenagers, right? How did those experiences fuel your own fatherhood now?
I think now I'm definitely a lot more open. And I always tell the kids even now, whatever you want to get into, if you put in the time or if you're willing, like, I'll be right there with you. Like a little more kid directed within reason. But if you say like, I want to be a Broadway star, but you're not trying out for the plays at your school, you're not practicing singing, you're not putting in the work, then I'm not going to put in more work than you. And I say that to the kids I'm with, and I say to the parents where, if your kid's putting in the work, it's kind of, I believe, at least my own personal opinion, like, it's a bit of your responsibility too to help foster that. Like, they're putting in the work. If you want the relationship to be strong, then you can at least put in a little bit also, and you'll reap benefits from it. You can't just wash your hands and say, hey, this is your thing. I'm going to be over here. If you make it big, great, but I want nothing to do with it. Like, there's going to be side effects to that. There's going to be repercussions that you might not like.
Did your parents ever come back around after Dave now seeing the kind of parent that you are to your kids and say, sorry that we didn't do these things or allow these things, right? Or
Yeah,
foster these things?
yeah. And I ask sometimes, and what happens a lot, and I think us adults now forget that our parents, when they were adults, were also just trying to figure it out. And I was listening to Mel Robbins the other day, who also like hosts a very popular podcast, and she was saying like, I look at every adult I meet as a big 8-year-old. And my parents now, when I ask them about, they say like, we didn't even know how to be adults ourselves. And it was really like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, so thank God I'm alive. You mean? They're like, oh yeah, like we knew to feed you. And we knew like, all right, don't give the kids cigarettes or let him like run into traffic. But there was a lot of just them kind of trying to figure it out. And I think us adults now forget that and forget with ourselves sometimes and give ourselves grace that we're also trying to do better and figure it out. There is no perfect, if I do this, it'll absolutely lead to this result. But I know for me, it definitely helped to understand their point of view was they could barely take care of themselves and each other, which is another reason why they were very hands off. They kind of looked at it as, oh, he's got it figured out. Even though he's like a kid, we're going to leave him alone. So it helped me understand that's why they were very hands off. They were too afraid of overstepping and hovering too much, which their own families did. So they overcorrected themselves and went the other way. And now they realize like, yeah, we probably should have been more involved. And that's where luckily my wife and I think have found a very nice balance of we want you to have your own lives, like to our children, but we also want to like make sure that our family itself is healthy and we have enough communication and time together and openness that it's all being as kind of as best as it can be.
But Dave, how do you do that in like a best practice way, in a really tangible way for maybe moms and dads out there who are listening? How do you try your best not to overcorrect, right? So if you come from a family where your mom was a helicopter mom or where Annabelle called it like a scuba mom, right? Or we can be all the things. How do you make mindful or intentional choices to be the kind of parent that kind of walks the middle path? How do you do that?
I think a few parts that are easier start with communication because the older the child is, the more they're able to really verbalize and understand. And asking directly, like, hey, am I asking you to do things too much? Like me just coming into your room every hour while you're on the phone with your friends? Like, is that overstepping? Or does it bother you that I keep asking you to like come get your nails done with me or like let's hang out and watch something? And then asking them like, well, what is it you need from me? Like what do you like to and they might say like, I just like, like I like talking before bed. That's like our time. I've heard a lot of teens say that, where like, well, I'm not distracted with homework and I'm done talking to my friends and I'm not trying to get ready in the morning and I'm not doing all these other things. But like before bed, yeah, like that's our time. So if we're like on the couch and just talking while you have the TV on. So I think that communication piece is, and you could start as young as you want. And just as if you're using age appropriate language, kids will understand and they'll be open and honest and share with you. And also reading the cues. If you keep pushing yourself on your kid and their voice tone keeps getting more irritable, that's telling you something. You need to back off a little. Like you're about to cause a fight because you just keep intruding and it's not working. And it's hard. And I get it as the parent, like, don't talk to me that way. I'm the adult. Like, give me your phone. That's usually the kind of how the interaction goes versus teaching also the kids to say, listen, I'm not in the mood right now. Like I had a really bad day or whatever. Like I just want to watch my show. Like I just want to watch a few episodes or I just want to like do my work with music on. So again, back to that communication piece, back to reading the cues where it's kind of child focused and recognizing. So if seeing your kid is hanging around you a lot but not talking to you, they probably want to be around you,
They're looking for that connection, right? Back to that
right?
peak.
Like
Yeah.
even if they just, it's funny. I've seen it with families where, yeah, I went into my room to do my, to go on my Zoom call, and my kid like just came up in the room and he's like laying on the floor doing homework. I'm like, why are you in here? I'm like, why do you think he's in there? And being able later to kind of point out, be like, hey, later when you came in the room, like, did you just want to hang out with me? Like, yeah, I didn't want to be alone. Like, oh, okay. So I think those are things that people could do immediately. You could do it when you pick up your kids from school and be like, are we spending enough time together? Are there things you would like to happen more? Are there things that are happening too much? Are there things we need to do together? Are there things you need to do alone? Kind of like we were talking earlier about like self-care and that self-compassion and dynamics, right? Like you've probably done more in the dynamics world of looking at the different relationships. You have to foster each one, right? Like you have the son mother and the son father, and then the son mother father, and then the mother daughter, and like all these different kind of relationships that you need to foster and make sure are healthy and getting what they need. And I draw it on a whiteboard for the kids. And it helps a lot when it's visual and it's concrete, where we could say, well, it looks like you and dad are not really connecting. And I was doing this last night with a teenage girl I'm working with who's dealing with some depressive symptoms. And she said, like, yeah, I wish my dad like took more of an interest. Like every time my sister calls him from college, he sounds so happy. And he just talks about her the rest of the day. But when I talk to him, he's like distracted and it's like I'm bothering him. I'm like, oh, does dad know this? Kind of. I'm like, I think we need to work on this. This obviously is bothering you. This needs to be taken care of. You and mom are great. You guys talk 8 times during the day through texting and calling, and sometimes it's fighting, but most of the time it's not. And that's good. Like that's healthy for you guys, but we have to work on this. So as the parents, I'm going to meet with the parents and be like, hey, this is what your daughter is telling me, and this is what you can do. And it might take a little work, and it's hard. I know as parents, we get a little defensive, like, oh, that's not true, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is how she's feeling. This is what she's saying. And it's okay to then apologize, be like, listen, I didn't realize I was doing this, or I thought I was doing this thing enough that you needed. I guess I'm not. So I'm going to work on it too.
And do you think that's one of the hardest parts of your job, Dave, is lovingly trying to bring parents in, right, the relationship? And because I feel like this is something that's so hard, and you're so right. Oftentimes when, if I point something out to a parent about how their dynamic might be impacting the child's overall wellness, the parent will be very defensive with me, and I have to, right, like lovingly go back to, this isn't about right or wrong, right? Like a lot of things, and going back to that black and white thinking, right? We're indoctrinated about right and wrong. This is what you do. This is what you don't do. This is good. This is bad. But the truth is, when we talk about relationships and when we talk about connection, there's just a lot of gray, and everything exists on a spectrum, right? And so if your child says, "I'm not getting enough of this," you don't really get to say, "Yes, you are," because you're not the person who holds the cup. Right? The person who holds the cup gets to say, "Yes, it's full," or "No, it's empty." Right? So how do I mean, I don't know. Tell me your perspective on that, Dave.
No, I agree. And what I try to let the kids know if I'm working with, it's usually like preteens, teens, is that a lot of the defensiveness they may be seeing, usually it's rooted in a parent's own worry, their own anxieties, their own like, I'm not doing good enough. They take it right away as like, I'm not being a good parent, or I'm doing something to mess up my kid. And it sparks something like that, triggers them immediately. Or they've had this idea in their head of, I'm a great parent, I'm doing everything great and right and perfect. And when they hear something that contradicts it, it's very jarring. at first. So you might get like, I can't do anything right. Like nothing I do is good enough. And then, like you said, we have to be like, whoa, like this is obviously a pretty, sensitive subject. That's okay. Like, this is not going to be perfect. We could work on this. Nobody told you, Mr. or Mrs. Parent, what the right answers are. You're just doing your best. I get that. We're here to help you do better and to give you more tools because the more knowledge you have, the better you can do. It's not guessing anymore. You now know this is what your child needs in order to be whole or centered or connected with you, whatever it is. And isn't that great? Like, we're now hearing this is what they need. And every kid's different. Some kids might need a lot more than others. So that's where the communication and the compromise and the negotiating and everything else comes in, where maybe a parent can't commit to, like, I can't spend 3 hours every day listening to you talk about whatever else. Like, I don't have time in the day. You know, that's where I want to make sure you have friends and other people you connect with and family members and other adults, whatever. But I can do this and we can make sure it's meaningful and we can make sure it's like really, centered on you and what you need. I try to work with the parents' defensiveness in a way that I normalize it. I don't shame them for it. I don't poo poo it like, oh, you're being defensive and you're wrong and the kid's right. Like you said, no right or wrong. It's, this is how you're feeling now. This is how they're feeling. We can deal with this. We can learn to communicate with it. We can learn to take space to regulate ourselves so we could come back and communicate about it. So I always frame it in the term of learning and growth. So they're not turned off of, well, we tried doing this and we ended up fighting. It doesn't work.
But Dave, so even as we talk about learning and growing and growth, right? Learning and growth, what do you feel like has been the most challenging thing that you've had to learn as a person? So not parenthood, because I'm gonna ask you about that too in a minute. Or just as an individual, what have you really struggled with?
I think for most of my life, and even still now, I'm still working on it. It's whatever that really uncomfortable negative feeling I have, or that negative thought pattern that goes with it, that will eventually go away. That has been, if I could tattoo it on myself, the kind of this too shall pass in a certain way that really speaks to me, because what I've had since early childhood was more of like a panic disorder diagnosis, which is the fear of panic, the fear of intense anxiety in the future and not knowing when it's going to happen. Hopefully, not at the most inopportune time. So, the more you worry that it's going to happen, the more you ensure that it's probably going to happen. So, and psychology speak in the therapy world, they talk about like panic and severe anxiety of riding the wave instead of trying to stop it and knowing like, well, I can breathe through this and I can live through this. And at worst, it's going to be 10, 20 minutes of some pretty uncomfortable feelings, but it'll go away. And I don't have to hide it. I can let others know what's going on and not feel ashamed or embarrassed by it. And I don't have to miss out on the things I want to do in my life because of it. I might just kind of have to keep it around with me, kind of like the annoying roommate or neighbor that once in a while pops in. I'm like, oh my gosh, here he is. All right, like he's going to talk and be a little annoying for a little bit, but we'll just listen to him and be like, all right, buddy, like we'll see you later. And he's eventually going to leave. That for me that's completely changed my life for the better. I get like emotional talking about it sometimes because at its peak when it was really bad, I was actually hospitalized for a bit because of like severe, and I don't even know if we talked about it. I was like in a psychiatric unit for a bit and we had to figure out like right medication. I didn't sleep for like 3 months. I lost 35 pounds. I was like in severe, like hyper aroused state all the time, fight or flight. And like with the right medication and therapy and self care and daily practices, it's now manageable where when there are stressors that trigger it, those thoughts and feelings come back a little, but knowing that this is temporary, I can live through it, I can deal with it, I have the tools to cope with it, and then I'll feel better afterwards. I'll be okay. It's life-saving because the people that don't know that, and the kids I work with here that don't realize the more you fight it, the stronger it's gonna come back. If you learn to just, like, accept the feeling, acknowledge it, learn to cope with it, the smaller it becomes. And it's easier to deal with that little monster instead of the huge one. So when you talk about, like, in my life, whatever, like, my goal, and I tell the kids, like, I wanna prevent severe things happening in the future. So with the older kids, I tell them, like, my real job title, if I had to put it on a card, I would tell them, like, I'm a preventionist. I wanna prevent suicidal ideation and action. I wanna prevent drug addiction and dropout. I wanna prevent severe depression and dependency on healthy relationships. If I can prevent those things, I've done my job. That's my goal. That's it.
I love that, too. And, I
That's
think
why that's why I wrote the book I wrote. That was the kind of impetus to where, right, not to like segue, right, like segue forward, like how's that for a transition? But that was really the goal. The goal is I always I think of my own kids, I think of your kids, everyone kids. These are gonna be adults one day. And they have to function and they have to survive and hopefully thrive on their own at some point and at some level. And I wanna be able to sleep at night knowing that my kid in college or in their apartment or in a different country, they can take care of themselves through good or through bad, and they'll be okay. And if they need me, I'm here, and we have a good enough relationship that if they need to call me and they really need me, I'll be there.
Dave, I think part of the reason, and over the years, I've sent so many people your way because of the passion and the work that you do. And I think so much of the reason why you are so passionate about the work, about this work, is because this is an extension of yourself, right? You have been that kid who went through so many things in terms of having this anxiety or the fear of the anxiety that is crippling, right? Going back to what you just said, if you can then help aid and arm other children with the tools and the strategies, then you're living your purpose, your mission, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting, like, you phrase it that way because early on, and part of it's culture, society, not to get political, but a lot of it's about making money. And even other professionals I talk to, like, it's really, right? Like, it's money driven. I know you have to make money, you have to pay bills. That's the way society is. Prices go up, like things change. That's the way it is. But if there's no purpose, or even looking at it as, and I talk to a lot of these young adults that are or teens that are very scared about their future. Like, what if I don't like this? What if I can't do it? What if I like if you can't find something you love to do, that's okay. Find people you like to be around. And that might be your purpose. It might be, this is my work family. I love these people. The job is the job and whatever. I work for a cruise company. It's not life-saving work or whatever, but it's a decent job and it pays okay, but I love who I work with. And I love little aspects of it. There's parts of my job or parts of the things I do that are stressful or I don't love or whatever, but that's gonna be in any job.
I love that you said about finding what you need, right? Even if that's working on a cruise ship and just being around people that you like. Because I think at the end of it, and I'm sure you've met with lots of grown-ups, because as much as you do work with children and young people, you and I both know that it also requires a lot of work with the parents. And we've seen what can happen when you are in a job that you hate, when this job is sucking your soul, right? You are not going to show up as the best parent. You're not going to show up as the best human or person. So, one of the things that is, I think, is so important, which is what you've done, is you have used some of the things that have created so much turmoil in your own life actually to like help catapult you into your own success of finding your own lane and helping kids and young people because of the very things that you're passionate about because you've lived this. So it's one thing, it's like having an oncologist who has never had cancer. I'm sure they're great. They've studied. It's a whole different thing when you have an oncologist who has been there, who has had cancer, who's like, listen, not only do I know this is not the medication you need to take, I've taken it before. I know the side effects. This one is way better. Different when you lived it.
They talk about that. I remember in grad school often they talk about the different powers you come to meetings with, you come in the room with, where that relatability or that experience or knowledge where, so I'm a parent. So yeah, I could talk to you as a parent. I've been there as a parent. I'm a professional, so I kind of have like this knowledge base. I used to be a teacher. So if I'm talking to a teacher, be like, yeah, I've managed a classroom. Like I've been there. I've also, been in a band. So like if I'm talking to this one, like, yeah, I've had to like book shows or I've played in front of 3 people. Like I've driven hours for like a $10 gig. Like I've been there. So putting on those different hats, and that's part of that connection piece, right? Like you find that piece where you can connect because, to kind of bring it back to you talking about like, culturally and there's all these differences where you can always find something with even someone you really disagree with on a lot of stuff. You could find something that you have in common and connect with. You might not agree with a lot of those other things. You might not be friends with them or whatever else, but we have a lot more in common than I think we give ourselves acknowledgement for because it's gotten very easy to kind of find your echo chamber and to find your groups and stick with your groups.
If I other you, it's easier for me to hate you.
Right.
Right. And if I say, no, we are different, then I can almost convince myself that you deserve less, whatever that less might be.
Yeah.
Less dignity, less opportunities, whatever the
Yeah.
less might be, right?
Right.
So, but I
Yep.
think you're absolutely right. If we really were to talk to all the people on the planet, we would go, holy shit, we're really not that different.
No, a lot of the people want a lot of the same stuff. And it's the news cycle, it's social media, all these other things that are kind of promoting that disconnection and that finding whatever. And part of it's just, that's what we watch. Our brains are wired for discourse and bad news and fighting and just it gets more views and clicks and attention, whatnot. Nobody wants to hear like, oh, all these different cultures came together and now they like have Thanksgiving every year and they all bring different foods from their different culture and now they're all friends and you would never think these people would get along because like they have nothing in common. They barely speak each other's language. Nobody wants to really hear that, but that happens, and I'm always promoting that. All the kids I work with and the young adults and whoever, like, talk to everyone, talk to anyone. You'll never know who you might connect with and find a similarity with, and then you're surprised. And not like you have a new friend or a new acquaintance or a new colleague, whatever, a new employee or employee where you'll find it. Like I find a lot of new friends. It's funny at the gym. So even though like I'm old and short and whatever, like I still play basketball. So I'm meeting these like 20-year-old guys that, they're like, what is this guy doing on the, and then we'll play ball together. And we're like, oh, like you could play. I'm like, yeah, I try to keep up. And I'm like hanging out with these 20-year-olds and would never know. And then we find like, oh, what show did you watch? Oh, I just watched this. Oh my God, that's my favorite show. Like, that's my favorite show. And then like we go into this like little bromance of whatever. And then every time I see him at the gym now, it's always like, oh, like, so that's the stuff and it's funny, like I never, I'm very extroverted, like, I'm one end of the spectrum that, like, is on her up I like to say, like, I'm aggressively friendly. Like, it's a bit much. Like, you can ask Eliana, my daughter, who you know, like, for her even, she's like, You need to, like, rein it in, man." But I like modeling that for them, and I like to teach them, like, "No, no, like, it's you can be polite, you could be kind, that person over there, like, we can strike up a conversation, whatever else, and it doesn't have to be awkward." Or if I get this sense, like, yeah, they don't wanna talk to me, like, okay, I can excuse myself.
But yeah, and which is really interesting, Dave, because I know we haven't talked about Sunny much, but so there's you who's like super outgoing, aggressively friendly, and then you have your wife, Sunny.
Yeah.
And how would you describe Sunny?
She always says she's kind, but she's not friendly,
It's a great description, actually.
right? Like, she always tells people, they'll say, like, "Oh, you're so nice." She's like, "I'm not nice. I'm kind. I'm giving.
Yeah,
I will do kind things for you,
it's true.
but I am not this extroverted, friendly, I'm your best friend, and within 5 minutes, I'm giving a hug and a kiss goodbye." So we balance each other, and we'll kind of joke. She likes when I get to do these things because this fills something in me. Like, I need this connection and the conversing, whatever, so I don't go home and talk to her. So she knows when she comes home and I'm just like chatting her ear off. She's like, "You haven't talked to anyone today, have you?" I'm like, "No, no, I've been like writing all day." She's like, "You need to like find someone else to talk. Go talk to your son." Like, okay.
But Dave, that brings up this really great thing that I always tell couples, which is your partner cannot be all the things for you, which is why
Yes.
you need people, right? Like you need other
Yeah.
people who are where you can get that connection filled, right? So where you can go and talk someone else's ear off so that when you come home, you're a little bit more subdued and Sunny's like, "Oh, okay, yes, come."
I love that message so much of your partner can't be everything for you. And it's not fair to expect that. And I love that message for kids to learn.
Your parents.
You can't have one friend, your best friend can't be everything for you. And like, it's not fair. And when you have a partner, roommate, whatever else, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, and other, don't expect that. That leads to codependency. Like, and I've seen that play out in my own family, and that does not work. I love that message.
But Dave,
And it's
even in the
even in
classroom,
the classroom.
it's a very
Yeah.
unhealthy dynamic, right? "Oh, that's
Yeah.
my best friend. Why do you can't play with her. I thought you were gonna play with me."
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah. It's not fair. And a lot of times it doesn't play into that person's personality or strength of what they can give you. So it sets up this expectation that's gonna fail, and then the other person feels inadequate or angry or guilty or ashamed instead of realizing early on, like, I can't be all these things to you, but I can be this, and we can connect here and we can do these. It's cute, like in the typical couples therapy, right? Like, you guys should have a date night where when you peel it back, like, yeah, that actually, if it's done correctly, yeah, that couples should have a date night. I don't know how often and what the date might look like, but yeah, that's important.
I love that, Dave. So, I know I wanna respect your time, Dave, because I know you probably have things to do. Um, but I always kind of end with this question. When you think about life, what would you say in your experience is the purpose of this life? What do you think is a secret? Is there a secret?
I I think for me, from early on, I've always been the one that people talked to since I was little, like 7, 8, 9 years old. So I think for me, it was about that connection. That was for me, like that's my religion, so to speak. That's one of the things I like about it's interesting. It's my son's bar mitzvah tomorrow and Saturday. And it's all the temple and family together, this whole big thing. And what I look most forward to it's the connecting. It's the, oh, we all get to be together and I get to like see all my relatives and all these friends and like that to me is so fulfilling. It's not the religious aspect and it's not these other kinds of things or as much as I love seeing like my son with his friends and have fun and it's great, even though like he's doing that all the time anyway, it's been more of that. And I love that what I get to do for a living allows me to connect with new people. And I say, like, if I can help you, if I could be a source of any kind of teaching or help or guidance, whatever, it's it's my it's for my benefit as well. It's my privilege that I get to do that. And I thank the parents. And I thank the kids. I'm like, thank you for like trusting me. Like it's a lot of trust to open up like that or to bring your kid and be like, yeah, like, don't F him up. Like here he is. And I don't take it lightly. And I'm very grateful that I'm able to do it. I always say to the kids that are interested in the field or the people that are like, how'd you know what you wanted to do, what you wanted to be? I'm like, I knew for a while, but I tell you, the minute I don't have the passion for it anymore, or I do start to burn out or anything, I will change. I will find something different to do. And it might be in this field, but it might look different.
Dave, because you and I both know and we have seen in the world of education what happens when people who should have left stay too long.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm seeing, and you've probably seen it with your own kids when you've gone into schools and wherever else, and it's unfortunate, and it's going to happen in any field, right? Even law, engineering, anything where we're humans. Not all humans are, wired to, okay, you're going to do this for 40 years and you have to do it with passion and integrity and intent and it's to the best of your ability and not burn out. And every day you have to be on. Like, we're, you know, I use the George Carlin line, like, we're cavemen. We're Neanderthals with really nice phones and bigger vocabularies. So to expect that, that's a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. Something that I've realized as I've gotten older is that the purpose and passion, it shifts as you get older. So what used to be my purpose when I was 23,
Mm,
that might not be my purpose when I'm 64. And
yeah.
I'll have the ability at any time that I'm allowed to pivot. In fact, my wellness and probably the wellness of all the people around me is betting on that I'm able to pivot when and if that does happen.
And knowing that you're not stuck, that if you need to, you can. It might be uncomfortable. There might be some harder days, but you can do it. And I remind that to these young people that very much worry about their futures. I said, you can pivot. You can make a change or do whatever. Like you're not stuck. You're not locked in. You might need support. You might need help. You might need whatever. It might not look exactly the way you want, but I don't want you to ever feel like I'm stuck. This is the expectation. This is what I have to do now for the next 40 or 50 years. No, I love that we got to have this conversation and connect. And thank you for hosting this and having people on and sharing it. This is one of the things I think that's been good with the evolution of technology and media that we get to connect with more.
Yes. And so much people get to share their stories and their wisdom and
Mhm.
their knowledge. And, I think sometimes you forget, Dave, all of us have a story. And all our stories, someone can hear something and they can go, that I didn't even know that was a thing. Right. And if someone can walk away with a little bit more clarity or understanding of themselves because of something that you shared in your story, that's why I started this. Is
It's wonderful. No, I'm so grateful, and thank you for everything you do. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So please, everyone, if you like what you hear, and let's say you want to hear more of Dave, we would love to have him back in the future. And if you know someone that you think would benefit from Dave's story and all the things that he talked about, please go ahead and share it with them. We look forward to your wonderful, incredible feedback. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And Dave, again, I appreciate you so much, my friend. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Take care.